Brexit campaign. We've already heard your speech, or part of it, in Parliament this morning. You were almost gratuitously rude to the parliamentarians, and you enjoyed it.
Now look, they were abusing me from the moment I started. Twice the President of the Parliament had to cease proceedings and say, please listen to Mr Farage. Then when I said to them, can we be grown up about this? Can we talk about trade deals? And then they all laughed and giggled. That was when I said to them, well, of course, the trouble with you people is none of you have ever had a proper job, which wasn't wrong.
But the point is, Mr Farage, it hardly endears you to the very people who are going to have to give their consent to an agreement in 2 years' time if you are rude to them.
Well, they called me all the names under the sun. I just teased them about the fact they're a bunch, basically, of bureaucrats who've never had a proper job. Look, forget that.
You don't like them?
They don't like me. It's mutual.
And you haven't liked them for how many years?
Well, all 17 that I've been here. Look, what they've tried to do is to build a political union without consent. And I've been in there to fight against it. And finally, a member state of this union has said, we wish to succeed. And they didn't like it much.
So, our viewers in the United States who are watching now and wondering what on earth is going to happen to Britain. How can Britain thrive, I didn't say survive, I say thrive, outside the European Union when the banks have been decimated in the share price and the threats have been very severe?
You know, yesterday...
And the pound has fallen 13, 14%.
Yeah. And FTSE's up 3% today, 12% up since its lows in February. Sterling is marginally lower than it was in February. So can we stop this nonsense about the markets? You know, the pound has been in a bear market since July 2014. Fact. Now, American viewers, imagine if NAFTA was a political union. Imagine if a court in Mexico could overrule anything that Congress did. Imagine if you had free movement of people with Mexico. How would you feel? You wouldn't like it. And what we're doing in the UK, we're reasserting our democratic rights. And in terms of business and trade, we'll go on trading.
You are starting to sound, in some way, with the similar policies to Donald Trump. Now, he admires the Brexit result. He said it was fantastic, it was brilliant. Do you admire Donald Trump in this US presidential election?
Well, Donald Trump dares to talk about things that other people want to brush under the carpet. But what Mr. Trump is doing in America is very different to what I'm trying to do in the United Kingdom. My problem in politics is far greater than Donald Trump's. We literally have lost our sovereignty, lost our borders, lost our ability to regulate.
He would say the same thing about US borders.
Well, the problem that you've got in the US is illegal immigration. Our problem is legal immigration to 500 million people.
So you wouldn't be looking to him for too much support, because on the one hand, he also says if he becomes President of the United States, Barack Obama's going to the back of the trade queue wouldn't happen. You'd be at the front of the queue. So in many ways, you must hope he becomes president.
Well, I think for the United Kingdom, I think Trump would be better for us than Barack Obama's been, if that was no doubt.
And against Hillary Clinton? Or are you not going to take sides at this early stage?
There's nothing on earth could persuade me ever to vote for Hillary Clinton.
You're sure you don't want to think about that for a second?
No, absolutely not.
I mean,
I mean, she represents the political elite. It's almost as if she feels she has a sort of divine right to have that job.
You keep talking about the political elite. You keep talking about the establishment. Sir, you're part of it. Well, you've been here for 17 years.
Yeah, but I came into it from business. I used to trade commodities and currencies. So I had a proper job once.
How on earth do you have the effrontery to criticise Wall Street, the banks, you criticise big business when you were part of those markets?
Well, yeah, but the markets aren't just dominated by big business. Good markets have small and medium-sized competitors trading in them too. And look, you know, the actions of Goldman Sachs, in cahoots with this European Commission, getting Greece into the euro and everything else, we need change.
All right, you've got your change, you've got your referendum, you've got to agree that the UK at the moment The Labour Party has imploded with Jeremy Corbyn has lost, the opposition party that is, has lost the vote of confidence. The Prime Minister has resigned. You've got leadership elections in two parties. This is sending a terrible message about what's happening in Britain to the rest of the world.
It's a great message.
How can you say that, sir?
It's a great message. Our political class have let us down like a cheap pair of braces, and what we did last week in that referendum was say, get thee gone. Political change will be a good, healthy, constructive.
How much damage are you prepared to see? Because the Chancellor now accepts that there will be a recession. He said so on BBC Radio this morning. He accepts that there was going to be economic damage. How much damage are you prepared to accept before you rebuild the house?
Do you know something? Freedom, independence, democracy, not being a slave to somebody else is something upon which you can't put a price. And what we did last Thursday is we voted to take back our country, to take back our laws, our courts, our borders, our pride and self-respect. And you know what? Actually, I think in trade terms, we're going to do better than we did before.
Right.
Just last night, the Australian and New Zealand Prime Ministers said they want to come to the front of the queue for a trade deal with Britain.
Now, let's just look at our European partners. Angela Merkel sounds as if she's, pardon the pun, angling to do a deal, or at least there's a deal. But they won't allow informal negotiations without Article 50 being invoked. And that's not going to be invoked. This is the article when the time limit begins. So when would you like to see it invoked?
I feel now that there is a logic that says that there is a degree of uncertainty as to where we're going with all of this, and it doesn't make sense to wait till the autumn. I think what the government needs to do is to put a negotiating team in place and to declare Article 50, to invoke it within the next few weeks.
Within the next few weeks, before the next leader is in place, before the new Prime Minister?
Yeah, I think we do need to send a message that we're serious about this. We didn't play around. We're honouring the referendum result. Let's crack on.
Couple more questions. Do you have a view on the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland?
As long as he or she is committed to upholding the will of 17.5 million people last Thursday in that referendum, I couldn't care less who it is.
Right.
What I don't want to see is backsliding.
Are you, just on this question about the money, you've been asked it a million times, you said you would never have made that promise about spending 350 million on the NHS.
Yes.
But when that promise was being made, Mr. Farage, you weren't out there saying, hang on, this isn't right, you can't make this guarantee, hang on, this is being disingenuous, hang on, this money needs to be spent elsewhere. You kept quiet.
I kept saying that net, our contribution was £220 million a week, which we could spend on whatever we chose.
But you didn't challenge your fellow Brexiteers on their assertion that it would go to... Should you have done?
Well, that's my problem. I'm just too soft, too kind and too easy.
There are many words that I would use to describe you, sir. None of those would come within my vocabulary. Finally, if you were in the room tonight at dinner, you'd probably be on the menu rather than actually sitting at the table, but if you were in the room at dinner, what would you be saying to your fellow European partners over the Chateaubriand? We don't know what's on the menu, but...
No, the wine would be good. I would just say, let's stop threatening, let's stop being silly. You need us far more than we need you. Let's crack on, have a sensible tariff-free trade deal, and allow us to be free to go off and pursue our global ambitions.
Nigel Farage, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
There's an enormous number of people waiting to talk to you, so I thank you, as always, for being honest and forthright, as always.
Who had the guts to defy their party political leaders, to defy the establishment, to defy the elites and to defy the big boys. I can't imagine there's ever been a campaign in which ordinary folk have been subjected to so many threats. I have to say that it's been a long campaign. In my case, 25 years. And whatever happens tonight, whoever wins this battle, one thing I'm completely certain of is we are winning this war. Euroscepticism was considered to be fringy, fruitcakey, to quote the Prime Minister. Pretty odd. And now it looks like tonight, maybe just under half, maybe just over half the country is going to vote for us to leave the European Union. I promise you this, if the result is that we vote to leave, we must make sure the government carries out the will of the people. If the vote is we haven't quite made it, then we've got a lot to look forward to as continued EU members. Tomorrow, Mrs Mogherini, the Foreign Affairs Minister, will launch their big new global initiative, including defence. Next week, talks begin for Turkey to join the European Union. And in July or August, we look forward to the third Greek bailout. And what has dominated this campaign has been an issue that Westminster finds very difficult to talk about. An issue for which I have been demonised for much of the last 10 years, but an issue, and I shall never remember going to Bolton and a lady grabbing my hands with tears in her eyes and saying, why doesn't the Prime Minister come and see what he's done to our lives, how he's changed our community, what he's done to the prospects of our kids getting jobs or school places or houses? And that issue, if we do vote to remain, is one that is not going to go away. The Eurosceptic genie is out of the bottle, and it will now not be put back. But perhaps even more remarkably, the biggest change from this referendum is not what's happened in the United Kingdom, it's what's happened across the rest of the European Union. We now see in Denmark, in the Netherlands, and even in Italy, up to and around 50% of those populations want to leave the European Union. I hope and pray that my sense of this tonight is wrong. And my sense of this, and no, I'm not conceding, but my sense of this is that the government's registration scheme, getting 2 million voters on, the 48-hour extension, may be what tips the balance. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm made a fool of, believing that to be the case. But either way, whether I'm right or wrong, if we do stay part of this union, it is doomed. It is finished anyway. If we fail tonight, it will not be us that knocks out the first brick from the wall, but somebody else. We have fought an amazing campaign. Even a year ago, we were told the Remain campaign would be 20, 25, maybe even 30 points behind the establishment position. We're not. We're running them close. They've been scared. They've behaved pretty appallingly. But tonight, whatever the result, is not one for recriminations, but for a celebration that the landscape of British politics in the course of the last few weeks has changed, and it's changed forever. Win or lose this battle tonight, we will win this war. We will get our country back. We will get our independence back, and we will get our borders back. Thank you.